Welcome to the Empowerment Show with Melissa Heisler. Every week, discover new personal choices with practical, inspiring guides. And now, here's Melissa.
Welcome to the Empowerment Show. I'm Melissa Heisler, stress reduction expert at It's My Life, and it is your life. Live it. Today, I will be talking with Eliana Gilad about female leadership and her new book, Miriam's Secret. Welcome to the show, Eliana.
Oh, thank you, Melissa. I'm delighted to be here.
And I'm thrilled to have you here. I've heard about this book for about a year now, I think since we talked last. And your book, Miriam's Secret, is about the elder sister of Moses. What led you to tell her story?
Oh, that's an excellent question. First of all, this book it must be the longest launch in history, 20 years in the making. But then again, it took the Israelites 40 years to cross the desert, so 20 years is pretty fast. And what began as one book has morphed into a 4-book series. The first one, the series is called Miriam's Secret, and the first book is revealing the ancient wisdom of feminine leadership. And
I'm sorry, you cut out there. The first book is?
The name of the series is Miriam's Secret. The name of the first of book 1 is Revealing the Ancient Wisdom of Feminine Leadership. Was that clear?
Yeah, that was clear, and I guess this is going to take us into a whole new area because it's not, and maybe it starts with Miriam's story, which we can get into if that makes sense. But what is feminine leadership? And can you talk about that in relation to your book and in relation to the concept itself?
Yes. Oh, I love it. Thank you for asking. Feminine leadership, to me, means, let's go to the opposite right now. What we know as leadership today, which is based on the one who leads. There's the leader and the followers. And we live in a star culture. We live in a culture of ratings. We live in a culture of a popularity contest. Let's say even television ratings, the Nielsen ratings. That determines, our whole modern life is structured around this. So there's one, and they're the followers. Whereas feminine leadership is, your power, and no need for ratings, because true power knows its own and doesn't need to be graded and doesn't need to be acknowledged even from the outside. And this brings me to the issue of the prophetess Miriam. So I would say because of her, we in the Western world and we in modern times exist, because it was she was a very powerful prophetess, and she prophesied the birth of Moses. I don't know whether people who are listening know the biblical account or not, and there's no need. I'm not a religious person by any stretch of the imagination. There's no need to know biblical stories, and there's no need to be religious here. In fact, and those who are religious, great. This is not religious or not. It doesn't have anything to do with religion, but energetics and self-acknowledgement and knowing one's own power and being connected to the source of one's inner truth, which that source is the same for all of us, and it expresses itself in very different ways amongst the billions of people on this planet. And in pre-biblical times, we lived according to a feminine worldview. What I mean by that is that many different layers of reality existed at the same time. Let's think about Mother Nature. All right, they're seasons, and seasons are cyclical. They're round. It's not one linear, one after the next. What would be a good example?
Well, I'm going to give you a pause there, Eliana, because you've said so much that I want to make sure that we comment on and discuss about. I thought it was very interesting how you related our current society to ratings. And what started to pop through my mind are all of these shows out now, the Voice, all these, who's going to be the next greatest whatever. And it's all of this panel of judges that are telling you whether you're worthy or not, whether there's value or not. And it's very interesting that this concept of feminine leadership or viewing the world from feminine eyes, and can we take a pause there even, that it doesn't necessarily mean that this is anti-men. It's more of the label of this style of leadership. Is that correct?
Thank you so much for saying that. It has nothing to do with men or women. It has to do with femininity. What do I mean by femininity? Graciousness, patience, listening, reading, intuition. That's not, both men and we all have these traits. Now, we have all that, how we've been living for the past 3,000 according to with the advent of mono, we've been living, like that in history, in human history, was from a feminine worldview towards a masculine. There's no right or wrong. Everything continues. And at this point, I would like to repeat what you just said to the prophetess Miriam, because it's so apt. Why she is important to me. What does this prophetess have to provide me? When I look at her, who was this? Who was this who prophesied Moses' birth as a small child to her father, who was the head of the Israelites? And the story goes that Pharaoh decreed the death to all firstborn males, such that there would be no more, that would kill out the Hebrews. And Miriam's father, Amram, said, "Oh, really? Well, I'll just divorce my wife, and everyone follow suit, and then there'll be no kids. He won't be able to kill anyone." And Miriam comes and she said, "Well, Father, your decree is even worse than Pharaoh's, because he said the firstborn males, and by you divorcing your wife, the entire community follows suit, and you're destroying your entire people. Listen to my words. Take your wife back. The community will take their wives back, and you will have another child, and this child will be the one who will save your people." And the father, Amram, listens to this 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old girl. Who is this who the father listens and follows her direction? That's power. Now, if a leader of an entire community is listening to this shows power. And we do know that in ancient Egypt and thousands of years prior to that, the leaders would go to the temples and they would avail themselves of special sound and rhythm, and to the prophetesses, women were of high standing and leaders. And we've forgotten this over time, as we've been these past 3,000 years, evolving to where we are today. And the last thing I'd like to say is that she knew her power. To me, feminine power, feminine leadership is that she didn't need to be in the front. What if she knew, because she's a prophet, of so connected to the source of the universe and of all knowledge, because when we connect to the source of our power, we are in contact with everything. Yet where we went with history was towards masculine power, where there's an intermediary. And I'm not judging that. There's no right or wrong, again. I'm not trying to sell any, I don't have any bone to pick with anybody.
What I love about what you're talking about, and since this is the empowerment show, I think why I really love it is that, we can take it out of the political sphere, and it's really about self-empowerment. It's about knowing our truth and having the courage to speak our truth. And even if we are in a role of leadership, to have the courage to listen to others. Because I think a lot of times there's also this expectation. If you're a CEO or if you're the president, you're expected to know everything. And to go to other experts, to trust others, to be able to share their truth and their knowledge takes a lot of strength as well. And so I think it really gets to self-knowledge and then the relationships between others.
That's such an important point because, like you say, when that self-trust and self-empowerment. So when we feel empowered within ourselves, we have, why do we need to prove? There's nothing to prove. And so there's room for others. And then that, to me, is the key to abundance and the key to prosperity. And so, such a fun way to live.
Right, and you're right, when there's no rating, there's no number one. And so we can all be number 20 in the group, and that's okay because it is more of that sharing environment. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to talk about then it's all about collaboration. It's about, like you were saying, that we're, how many billions of people, and we're each unique and we each have something to offer. And if we just rate it by one thing, we negate all of the other beauty and resources and gifts that we have to give.
Yeah.
This is really powerful for me. Go ahead.
Paucity, poverty, deprivation, depression, ick. when there's one, and oh my God, I listen to you and I challenge myself to imagine, what would that be like? As that actually the healing and transformational music modality that comes out of this work, it's called Voices of Eden. And why Voices of Eden? Because it's a living experiment, a living experiment of creating Eden. I mean, imagine as each and every one of us connects to our inner truth, and we dare to express it, and we hear each voice, and together that forms a unified whole. Better than sex, like.
Well, and I want to take this moment, too, because I think if we talk about Eden and we talk about Miriam and you talk about Source, there's a lot of people who would jump to religion and to a dogma. And I don't know exactly where you come from, but I just wanted to say, a lot of what you're saying I agree with completely. And I don't think it has anything to do with any sort of religion or even any sort of spirituality. It is a part of us that we have neglected. So it's a tool, it's an ability that we have that we've lost touch with. And maybe this is a good way for you to talk about intuition and about that other part of us.
Wow, I'm gonna listen to this afterwards. That was brilliant. Yeah. So what's the question, or what would you like to?
Well, when we talk about that, about Source and about our gifts, I think that gets to probably the thing that we can understand the best is intuition. And so if we can talk a little bit about how do we get to know our intuition? How do we get to trust it, which I know is a very difficult thing for myself and for many others. And so how do we relearn this part of us? How do we get to be Miriam at 6 years old, to have the confidence to know and to be able to share these things coming to her?
Yeah. I can share from my own experience. One is making the commitment. I guess that requires courage, doesn't it? I mean, in today's world, it requires stopping. Because, of course, the thing is, intuition, you don't do anything for it. If you're doing something, you're stopping. And in this approach, and one of the, it's less is more, and slow is the fastest route to any destination. It's the longest book, because when I made the commitment to write this book, was singing on the inner city trains of France 25, I don't know how long ago, 1992, after broadcasting the Olympics in France. I was living in France at the time, and, so I knew one day, I would follow through and write these stories, and it was a commitment that I made, and here it is 23 years later, 20, however long. I started to launch this book in maybe 2006. But part of the thing of writing it, and it has to do with intuition. For many years, it's like, why would I write a book? I mean, if it's intuition, why are you looking outside of yourself? I had maybe some people who are watching this. Have you heard of the Sedona method? Do you know the?
I have, yes.
So I had the great fortune in my life of being very, very close student of Lester Levinson, who came up with the Sedona method. And when I learned how to let go of the habit of holding on, Lester would say, why make freedom your goal? And the world is there to help us go free by. Put your freedom first, and then have do be whatever you will or desire. And that really made sense to me, just, intuitively. And, that was at the beginning of the 80s. I made a commitment then, that my freedom is my goal. And ever since then, that's how I've been living. Everything I've done, broadcasting the Olympics in one take, singing on the train, the TED Talk.
Right, and everything you do comes from that start of freedom. And for me, I focus on joy. If this isn't bringing me joy, then why would I want to be doing it? And I won't say that's not easy. I'm still a recovering type A, and for many people, it might sound like Bart Simpson going, do what you feel day. But coming from a Western society that's so deadline driven and accomplishment driven, to have a goal and yet know that you're going to reach it easier by waiting, by making sure every step is in joy or in freedom, I think it's much more challenging than the effort. There's so many people that we give, and rightfully so, give credit. They've climbed this mountain, or they've swum the English Channel, and that's an exertion, and that's a doing. But I found that accomplishment through not doing is more of a challenge, but more of a reward as well.
Right. Well, that's the feminine leadership. Because when you get there, your joy is the reward. It's No one, money can't buy that. No physical anything can, the physical stuff can be taken away. But the inner, I don't even know what the word is, the inner connection, that never goes away. Yet it brings us, you were asking about the intuition. Because it's not always, the challenging part is, when it's like molasses, when things aren't in flow. So does that mean that I'm not listening to my intuition? Does that mean I'm wrong? That's where the ego really, and I'd say that feminine leadership is also, in those times it's ugly, it's not tidy, it's uncomfortable, and it's sometimes dirty, and do you have enough courage, like true power to listen inside, connect to your true power, even when everything on the outside seems to be against you, especially when things are falling apart around you.
And I want to get to that because I think we wanted to talk about hardships and pain, but as you're talking, what came up to me, and I never get these right, but I think it's the Hindu goddess of birth is also the goddess of destruction. And so Kalia. And I love that idea because we often want the birth. Hey, I want to be the next greatest speaker. I want to get this role. I want to do, whatever it is that we want, and we want to be reborn. But we don't realize that to get there, we need to destroy the old so that we can move into the new, just like in nature.
In the book, so I interviewed a midwife who I know, who brought me in to train a group of midwives. This woman over her career has overseen 1,500, 2,000 births, both conventionally, in a hospital setting and home births. And I wanted to know from her how transformation and how change, how does that relate to birth, or, whether there's a connection. She goes, how could there not be a connection? I said, how? She goes, well, when a woman is giving birth, she said there's a certain point where during the contractions, there's a certain point where just before the baby comes out, it's like getting to the birth canal, to that very, very narrow place, that the woman, I'm going to die. I can't, I'm going to die. I freak out. She said, when that point happens, I, as midwife, know that all is well. She said, that's when I know that the birth will be, that there will be no complications. She said, where there are complications and where deaths occur, where C-sections, where is when the woman is not willing to let go. She's so terrified, and she needs to stay in control, and that is when all of the complications occur. But that's so amazing.
That's incredibly powerful. That's incredibly powerful. And I think that, again, recovering type A, control freak over here, the idea of letting go, of saying, I can't do this, is terrifying to so many people. And
terrifying. Roller coaster. Terrifying is like an understatement.
But then actually, I think some of the best things that have ever happened to me were the ones where I said, oh, well, I remember being in Peru and going up Machu Picchu. And I tell the story a lot. There's, huge luxury buses that are going up this road that can barely fit one bus. And yet there's another bus coming down the other way. So you're like mountain, bus, and then 7,000-foot drop.
Oh
And
my God.
there was a point where I went, if I died, which was quite possible, I'm going to have the best scenery in the world as my last vision. And that was me letting go. And, I could enjoy the ride up then because there was absolutely nothing I could do. I was not driving the bus. There was no way to get off it. There was no way to control the other buses coming down. There was no way to control what they called a road, but was like 2 pieces of dirt. I just had to give it up, and then that's where I found joy. And I think for me, joy, freedom, release, it's such a different way of living than I think most of us have been brought up.
Yeah. That's what I really like about this show. You really serve so beautifully to give voice to this aspect because it's not real, it's not real popular, in the media. And I feel really honored because it shows me that, it's using media for a constructive purpose. And, that's one of my, the reasons I'm on this planet, to use voice to help others to trust their own. Because again, wow, what will this world be like as we each connect with our authentic voice and we contribute it? I mean, I don't know. None of us knows. We're learning this together. We're all in this together. Exciting.
It is very exciting. And I just had a great meeting, and then we're going to have to wrap this up, unfortunately. But there's a wellness professionals group that I lead, and it's much more of a networking referrals group. But we got into an awesome discussion just like this, that it is time to come together. It is time to respect each other's differences. And it's time to find a different way to live. And I think there's so many people looking for that. They may not know what it is, but I think they're ready for that change because they're seeing that the way that they are living isn't working for them.
Who do you see? Who are the people who are ready, and what are they experiencing, and how do they define it?
Obviously the people who have made their own journey, a lot of people in this group have gone through their own struggle, and now they've become teachers to those people going through the same type of struggle. So it's, I think that's one movement is whether they become professional coaches or wellness professionals, or whether they just help out their family. They've gone through something, and now they want to help other people through it. I think that's one area. And then there's a whole group that they're still stuck in the cogs of corporate America or Western life, but they're not buying into it anymore. They don't know how to get out of it, but they know it's not working. And so I think, for me, if you know the tipping point, I think it's exciting because this is the group now that is going to bring this out into the open more, because they're looking for something different. It's not the people who were into the very spiritual stuff in the beginning, who are a certain subsection of the population. This is starting to get to the larger population, and where it's going to get more grounded, I think, in our life.
That's amazing you say that, because I left the States in the 80s, the recession of the 80s, when I was laid off of my yuppie corporate work, and I decided to leave then. But I'm going to leave now when I don't need to, because in another 20 years or so, I saw the writing on the wall. In another 20 years, everything's going to fall apart. And I'll be on the other side already, and I'll have so much to offer. And what's astounding to me is now I'm about to go back to the States, and with putting off this launch, that I was actually to be in the States last month. That's when I was going to launch it. And at the last minute, I put it off. And that was very, very difficult for me to do. It was very painful because I had to meet up with my, oh, I failed. Yet the reason why I put it off was that I didn't invest 20, 25 years of my life, honestly listening and walking the walk from the inside out to put something out, like to do it, to get it out. I'd be able to say, 2 days ago was supposed to be the launch. It was very sexy. It would be very sexy. I could say, oh, blah, 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 and you think, oh, she's so, whatever. But I wouldn't have my yayas. I would not be satisfied. And it would not respect me and these 20 years that I've been walking this walk, and it has not been an easy road. And it would not respect the power of this material. And so I'm coming to the States next month, and I'm going back to LA. I'm going back to where I came from. And my stepfather is, in the process of leaving. And it's like going back to where I began. And it's like a Shiro's journey. It's a parting. It's going back. It's going back to the old country. Here I've lived in the promised land, for 20 years. The place where people are terrified. It's so not politically correct. It's so, where people, oh my God, you live there. And yet, you see my beautiful, the beautiful pomegranate tree. The reality I live in is so very, very different than what gets portrayed in the media.
Right, and you're in Israel right now, just so we can be very clear for our listeners.
In Galilee, and actually in a trajectory, 20 minutes from here is the biblical site of Armageddon. The end of days. And yet, what nobody knows about this place is, people talk about the end of days from like biblical knowledge, but that site is one of the most important intersections on planet Earth. It shows 30,000 to 50,000 years of civilization, one layer upon the next, and many finds there show the feminine leadership. Yet it's not sexy, that's not something that, Western world, what brings people to Israel is the biblical stuff, and so that's what brings in the money for tourism.
Well, let's talk, Eliana. Absolutely, and it's unfortunately there's a lot of sites like that people don't know about, and just amazing information out there. I know that you will be coming to the States, and I don't know if you have information now to share, or if there's a website or a way that people can know about your book launch or about your trip here to the States so they can come see you live.
Sure. So the website is voicesofeden.com, VOICESOFEDEN.com. And there's a lovely gift on the site, which is a Well of Wisdom starter kit. And that starter kit is actually from the book. And there's an amazing, amazing music meditation there as well. And in addition, every week I have a YouTube channel called Voices of Eden, Ancient Israel. And every Wednesday I put out a new video. There's a Wisdom Wednesdays program, so you're welcome to register for free, to subscribe. It doesn't cost anything, and you'll be the first to know when the new videos come out. And I'd really, really appreciate your letting other people know about it. As together, this is not something that, again, I'm one person. I can't do this alone, and I'm not meant to. Together, every voice truly makes a difference, and together we're revealing and reviving an ancient, an ancient truth that has no religion, no dogma, and like you say, no belief systems, just who we are, and we already are that. So why not stop being not that?
It's a beautiful sentiment. It's time for us to be us, me to be me, and to see the value in it. That's a beautiful way to end this call. I so appreciate you being on again. I'm so glad we got to talk. That when you were on the show earlier, we did have your beautiful music, so I do encourage the listeners to go and listen to a live performance. I'm sorry?
Yeah. That was a fun show. Yeah.
Yes, it was an incredible show. And I do encourage the listeners, I'm actually going to go and get that download that Eliana talked about because I don't have that yet, so I'm excited about it. And if you wanted to also continue the conversation with Eliana and myself, go to facebook.com/The Empowerment Show, and we can continue this conversation together. So thank you so much again, Eliana, for being on the show.
If you would please go and comment on what does feminine leadership mean for you, and that would be very, very interesting. Our Facebook page is Healing Voice for the Voices of Eden page. So if you'd like to chime up there as well, that might be neat to cross-pollinate there. If you send me a link to the Empowerment Show page, I'll put it on the Healing Voice page. That would
Perfect,
be
yes. Yeah, we'll definitely get that conversation going across both pages, and I look forward to seeing you there, Eliana, and all our listeners, and thank you again for being on the show.
Join Melissa Heisler next week right here at The Empowerment Show. Join the conversation at facebook.com/The Empowerment Show or twitter.com/Empowerment Show.